Good Shabbos. This week's portion is Parshas Chukas, and the portion begins with the instructions for the preparation of the Para Aduma, the red heifer. The red heifer was a sacrifice brought outside of the temple. It was burnt, and the ashes were used to sprinkle on those people that became spiritually unclean after coming in contact with death. And it's understood to be a chok, a statute, a law without reason, or better yet understood as a law that we do not understand the reason, because there's one very interesting aspect of this offering. The Kohen, the priest that involves himself in the preparation, starts off as a man who is tar, who is pure, and when he comes in contact with this Para Aduma, with the red heifer and the ashes, he becomes impure. And the person who is impure, after having the ashes sprinkled on it, becomes pure. So the question is, why is it mitame es hatahar and mitahar es hatame? It has an opposite effect on the purification or the impurification of the person involved. But perhaps this is something we could extend to our understanding of history in general. We're now in a time where we're going through very tough times as a Jewish people, the people in Israel, and it's understandable and justifiable if people will think that they should despair. Where is history going? We thought we're going on the right path. We thought Israel is being successful. The level of anti-Semitism has dropped in many recent years, and now all of a sudden anti-Semitism is rising in the West. The nations of the world are once again poised to try to destroy us. The UN is not exactly our best friend. And we're surrounded by enemies. Iran might become a nuclear power soon. Hezbollah's sitting in the north with probably about 150,000 missiles able to rain down on all of Israel. There's good reason to despair. And you might think that our hopes for messianic times, where we say in our prayers that Israel is the Reishis Tzmichas Gulasein, is the beginning of the blossoming of our redemption, you might think that that's a failure. And perhaps this mitzvah of Para Aduma, or the subject of Para Aduma, of the red heifer, might teach us something else. That really there are chukim, there are laws, or the laws of history and the way history progresses, that we don't understand, that God somehow manipulates. There is a reason, there is a deeper understanding, but on the surface at least, it seems to be inexplicable. Just like, how is it possible that the pure become impure and the impure become pure? There are explanations possible, but at least superficially, it's very difficult to understand. And when we see history unfurling in front of us, we have the same questions. How is it possible that we're going towards messianic times when it seems that everything is going downhill? And I think all you have to do is say that, God works in mysterious ways. If you could imagine being a Jew in Europe during the Second World War, or even immediately afterwards, you would think it's the end of the world, at least the end of the world for the Jewish people. We're decimated, no place to go, poverty-stricken, no family. It's just beyond belief what the Jews must have been thinking and were thinking in the aftermath of World War II. But yet, from there arose the nation of Israel, almost miraculously. The UN supported the state of Israel, the establishment of the state of Israel, and even Russia did. And all of a sudden, there's a Jewish people. And then there's a war, the War of Independence. Millions of Arabs are surrounding us. We're just a new nation, hardly armed. And people has just barely survived the last few years. And somehow, again, miraculously, could it be explained within nature? But on the surface, you would have never guessed that would happen. Same thing happened in 67. Same thing happened in 73. We can go on how in history, which is more recent history, we're always surprised with the resilience of the Jewish people. and how that history does not really go in the way that it seems to be going. It doesn't. It's not always downhill. There was even a study, I think it was in the 60s, and I think it was a study out of Yale, but I might be mistaken, that said with the trajectory of the Jewish population and intermarriage happening in the United States, again, I might be mistaken in my numbers, but I think it said by the year 2050 or so, there'd be 30,000 Jews left in America. They obviously underestimated the power of the Jewish people, the willfulness of the Jewish people, our ability to survive and to get past all of the problems that we're faced with. And therefore, yes, it might be a chok, it might be hard to understand, but I think, and as I keep saying, there's obviously explanations behind everything. Why things happen the way they do. At first glance, it doesn't sound like it's going to happen, but it often does. So the question we could ask is, will Moshiach ever come? Will the Messianic times ever arrive? Will we live in that idyllic time in history when there's peace that reigns over all the earth, that the Jewish people will no longer be faced with enemies surrounding them, wanting to annihilate them? And of course, I don't have the answer, and I don't know the timing, and Jewish history is long and somewhat tortured, but where we are today is something that we would never guess 100 years ago, 200 years ago, or even 80 or 90 years ago. Not so long ago, even when Israel had survived, they still had terrible rates of inflation. They were poverty stricken. There was always something to worry about. And now we have a lot to worry about, but we also have a lot to look forward to. We know that we have a strong Jewish nation. We have people, and the youth in Israel are willing and able to fight the wars that must be fought. And we will survive, and we will have, as I always say, we have that resilience, which will allow us to rise once again once we get past this stage, just as like we did in the last 80 years. We constantly are able to get up and move forward. And hopefully the Messianic times are coming, whether they'll be soon or maybe they'll be delayed. As we say in our prayers, whether they'll be delayed or not, we pray that Messiah, the Moshiach, will come soon in our days. Good Shabbos.